Here with me today I have a Newman roller frame, the first of its kind and the most proven retentionable roller frame in the market. I also have Newman Roller Mesh, which is 30 to 40% stronger and higher performing than any other mesh on the market. And a Sherlock mesh panel. In my opinion, the quickest and most ingenious way to insert that mesh into a roller frame. Well, what if you could have the best of all three worlds? What if you could have, in a flash, a Newman flash panel? The Newman flash panel combines a Newman roller frame, a Sherlock mesh panel with Newman roller mesh to create the quickest, strongest, and fastest way to insert mesh into a roller frame. Have you ever tried to manually insert mesh into a roller frame? I mean, you have locking strips, clips, high-tech measuring devices, and, if you're anything like me, granted I'm not the best and fastest mesh stretcher in the world, but it takes me about 20 or 30 minutes to do this, and sometimes I don't get it right. Don't get the corner soft enough, so as I stretch it, it breaks. Yeah, that's a pain in the butt, and it takes a long time. With a Newman flash panel, I can do the same thing in about 5 minutes. So I save about 20 to 30 minutes in actually inserting the mesh. Now, how many shirts can you print in that time? In a manual screen printer, what, 50, 60 shirts? If you take that by your profit, $2 or $3 a shirt, I mean, it's costing me over $100 to actually insert this mesh. We all know that time is money. And if you're anything like me, I would rather spend that time making money on the screen printing press than losing money making the screen printing frame. So now it's time to put the flash panel to the test. We're going to be stretching today on a Newman Roller Master. First thing I'll do is I'll take the old mesh out of this frame. Takes me just a few seconds. And you still have to index the frame, of course. You want to make sure that your bolts are fairly tight. And then we'll insert the mesh in a matter of just a few minutes. As you can see, the mesh plainly clips in, very quick and easy, to all four corners. And the great part about these mesh panels is that the corners come pre-softened. And not only does it make inserting the mesh really quick and easy, it also makes taking the mesh out really quick and easy. So if you're manually stretching the mesh, taking the mesh out, yeah, you can do it, but it's really hard to get back in correctly. If you're doing it this way, you simply take the mesh out. That way you can change the mesh size and then reinsert the mesh. Once we have all our wrenches in place and we've secured the back of this frame, this is a 23 by 28 MZX frame, so it's more meant for manual presses, we'll go to start stretching it. Make sure that all our mesh panels are correctly inserted. Now that took me under 2 minutes. Typically when you're stretching one of these panels for the first time, you'll actually measure and you'll kind of set your starting point of where that mesh size, and this particular mesh size is 205 mesh, and so I'm going to slowly bring this up to tension. I'm going to get my tension meter out now and start measuring it. The great part about this Newman roller mesh is that this is a lot stronger than static standard mesh. So we're already at 30 newtons right here. And you want to be within about 1 newton, so we're about 30 and 29 newtons. This particular mesh size actually maxes out about 40 to 45 newtons. So we're going to continue to bring it up, bring up the tension while we check it. Now standard 200, 230 mesh won't get nearly that tight. You're going to lose, the mesh is going to start to break, especially if you're softening your own corners, probably about 30 or 35 newtons. We brought this up to tension. Right now we're sitting about 42, 43 newtons both directions. So we'll go ahead and tighten this up. And as we tighten it up, the Newman roller frames are actually designed to bow out, so we're going to gain tension as we tighten it. Now, of course, you'll want to use a torque wrench. With MZX, you're setting the torque wrench to 45, and then tighten the roller frames all around. So where do we end up? With this particular frame, we end up about 47 newtons both directions. Keep in mind, 47 to 48 newtons, that's about 250% stronger than your standing static frame and about 30 to 50% stronger than a standard mesh panel or mesh inserted into a roller frame. What we'll do now is we'll take our pressure reading on our mesh table so that next time we stretch this, it's actually extremely fast and easy. So this is a 23 by 28 frame. We are at 48 newtons. We're not using corner softening, but we are because we have a mesh panel, and we are at a 52 setting on the Y and a 50 setting on the X. And this is a 205N for Newman mesh. That entire process took about 5 or 6 minutes. Now, retensioning that, or doing it for the second time once we've already established where our pressure settings need to be, much, much quicker. As you know, the great part about roller frames is this mesh has more than one lifetime. we can retension it 3 to 4 times and continuing to use the mesh. Plus, if we're using the mesh panel, we actually pop this mesh out, put another mesh size in, and save this for another job. So let's act like we're retensioning this or starting out from scratch if we already know what pressure settings we need our tensioning table to be set at. So here we go, starting from scratch. Insert the mesh, make sure our rollers are indexed. And once again, I'm definitely not the fastest at this. So once our mesh is inserted, I make sure it's all tight. Then we'll set our wrenches. And as we set these, we want to make sure that we set them strong enough here so that we have enough room to pull. You also want to make sure that your mesh does not get caught in them as well. All right. Okay, everything's ready to go. We'll hit go on our stretching table. And that brings that directly to tension. And we're sitting at, wow. The second time we did that, because we brought it up to tension extremely fast, we're sitting at over 50 newtons. So you can see actually how strong these mesh panels are. And then as we tighten them, that will gain some more. 55 newtons, front to back. That is not only tight, but we did it relatively quickly. You can see the time on the screen right there. That is some strong mesh. Now after we're done stretching, we don't want to always put mesh protect tape on because we're at such high tensions here. Even if we put this into a screen frame rack, it could pop our mesh. Also, you can use purple tape once your image is on to tape on the inside of your frame as an ink dam. You just saw how strong and fast that mesh was, but let's do the Pepsi challenge. This is using a 156 standard yellow mesh in a Sherlock panel and a 166, which is actually a higher mesh, and a Newman roller panel. Let's put it on an M3 roller frame and see which one's stronger. Now it's time to crank it up. We took this and took it a step notch up with a 200 mesh or 195 mesh screen, and it's going to be a 205 Newman mesh screen. So let's hit go on the mesh rollers, and then let's bring this guy up to tension. So let's start measuring now. 30 newtons, 30 and 29. Typically with these standard mesh screens, this is about where you'd take them. But let's max it out and see how far we can get it. So the standard mesh performed not too bad, but let's see what the Newman does. First, we'll bring it up to initial tension. Which is 40. And then we'll max this guy out. Over 70. And I'm getting a little nervous here, so I think I'm going to call it good. We're probably going to be at 75 now. The numbers are getting really small. Whew, that was fun. The new one went up to about 75, whereas the other one broke between 55 and 60. So as you can tell right there, much stronger mesh. Now typically, you're not going to be stretching either panel nearly that tight, but that mesh strength does tell you how long the mesh will last on the screen and how many times it can be retentioned. We're here now to do the real test with my lovely assistant, Mr. Nick Wood. He's going to actually step onto the mesh. So Nick, why don't you step up here, step up to the plate.
All right,
I'll actually see how strong this mesh really is. And then I'm going to hit go, right?
All righty. There it is.
All right, so let's do some tensioning, stretching right here. Between his feet is 80 newtons. Just kind of showing you how strong that mesh is. I'm going to do it some more, Nick.
Oh, wow. Feels so cool.
All right. And 115 newtons between his feet. And we'll take you down now. Bravo. Thank you for putting your life on the line for the sake of Newman's new roller flash panels.